Welcome guys, my name is eShop, also known as the ePad, and I want to start my first review, The Legend of Zelda on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Kind of an odd place to start, but I have my reasons. Out of all the video game franchises I've played, the Legend of Zelda series have always stood out to me, with its exploration, the music, the characters. It's not the easiest franchise to get back into, but a lot of the Zelda games typically do something new. But what about the first Zelda game? Does it still hold up till today? Well, that's what this whole review is about, so let's get started.
Mr. Shigeru Miyamoto, the game designer that comes to my mind when Nintendo is brought up. I have to give credit to him. His inspiration to exploring caves in his world was something I was always fascinated by. Who knows the secrets that lay beneath Shinobi Japan? Though some games back in the Atari days were also some big adventure titles such as Sword Quest and Raiders of the Lost Ark. I know I need to still talk about that generation of gaming, but I still need to be reminded constantly, thank you guys. The shift of gameplay that Miyamoto created was pretty big, going from a linear platformer like Super Mario Bros. To a non-linear adventure like Zelda in 1987 just seemed new after the rebirth of video games. When it comes to the story in Zelda 1, the translation is sort of mistranslated. Simply put, there are three parts of the Holy Triforce: power, wisdom, and courage. The Prince of Darkness, Ganon, holds the piece of power, and Princess Zelda holds the piece of wisdom. Ganon wants all the parts of the Triforce because, guess what, he's the bad guy. But before Zelda was captured, she broke the Triforce of Wisdom into pieces, which is what our main character Link needs to find. Now when it comes to the Triforce of Courage, that's not really explained who has it. But judging by the game supporting three main characters, we all know who actually has it. When it comes to the graphics of this game, it's for the most part decent, and some things are identifiable thanks to its sprite work. The music for the Overworld will soon become what is the main theme for the series, like any NES classic. My favorite theme might have to be the title theme. It's a little slower, but not as repetitive. Though I am not a huge fan of the dungeon theme, however. After 8 dungeons with the same theme and the song having a short loop, it was irritating to the ears, I'm sorry. When starting up the game, Link seems to not have any item to defend for himself. But with this black square tile surrounded by color, the player would typically head in there to nab the wooden sword. After that, the journey begins. As soon as you wander off, you'll be greeted to multiple enemies and shopkeepers. You can grind for a while when battling enemies and buy some nifty tools like keys and bombs. The HUD is self-explanatory. You have your hearts, which is your health, and 2 items you can hold on to. The A button will always be your primary weapon, while your B button will be your secondary item that you want to use. So honestly, what are you supposed to do at this point? Well, you can start your mandatory journey off by completing dungeon to dungeon, or you can find these secrets throughout the overworld. In dungeons, your goal is to find one of the 8 pieces of the Triforce of Wisdom. While exploring these dungeons, you can also find treasures that either help fend off enemies with better range, or gain more access to the overworld. We have the bow and arrow, both separate items that deal just as much damage as your second sword, the candle, which burns bushes and lights up dark rooms, and my personal favorite, the magic wand. It deals the same amount of damage as your bow and arrow, without using any limits, and once you have found a magic book, your wand can now leave flames, effectively making it a bow and arrow plus the candle. And of course, for an NES game, The Legend of Zelda can throw many punches at you for the wrong reason. This game is indeed pretty difficult, and it's really because of the certain enemies and the overabundance of them. Let's get this out of the way. I haven't found the Dark Nuts super difficult. They appear in Dungeon 3, which is pretty early, but here's a tip. Try not to be relentless against them. Instead, position yourself adjacent from the Dark Nut and have them walk into your stab animation. As for the other enemy, screw the Whiz Robes, specifically the blue variety. You encounter them in Dungeon 3, which has a sudden difficulty curve because of them. These guys just can't stop shooting, and it's really irritating. The magic shield, which is able to block the Wizrobe's magic, seems needed, but you also have the Likes, who can also take away your shield, and are in the same room as them. Good God! As I also mentioned before, the overabundance of enemies is something that unfortunately does not make the game challenging in the right way. Many dungeon screens seem to flood the place with 10 enemies, and it doesn't help when you have statues shooting at you all the time. Speaking of which, these statues shooting fireballs at you can be blocked by the magic shield. However, some bosses shoot the same fireballs, and yet you can't block those. Why is that? It's not because they're a boss, because you can block the Aquamentus' fireballs. Couldn't they at least make the color different? The given items do make up for the sheer amount of some enemies. However, if I had to recommend something, do not upgrade your boomerang to the magic boomerang from Dungeon 2. It travels twice as far than the wooden boomerang, but you're essentially increasing the wait time while the boomerang is traveling back at you, and it doesn't really help if you miss an enemy and leave yourself vulnerable. The dungeon designs have their variety in color, but they don't stand out much. Their maps are shaped respectively like the eagle, the moon, the manji, the snake, the lizard, and the
Oh, wait a second. Huh. Those bastards.
Aside from completing the 8 dungeons before the final dungeon, the player is also given the Overworld. You are meant to search for secrets, though it's not a matter of where you can find these secrets, but instead which tile is triggered. And this is the main problem with Zelda 1 and its age. It's way too cryptic for its own good. Every tile on a rock, mountain, or bush look identical to each other and does not give much clues if there is a secret there, and it doesn't help when you don't have a proper map to begin with. So if all tiles of an object look identical, what exactly is going to compel you to bomb a random wall or burn a random bush aside from sheer boredom? Even the dungeons do that. You have to bomb every wall to be sure there's something there. It's less arduous than the overworld, but you are still certainly not safe from events like this.
Oh man, I actually feel sorry for those who played this essentially blind. I would be more upset towards this game, but the first time I played it, I used the guide because I heard how cryptic this game was, and rightfully so. I mean, let's be real here, people. Without using an outside source, whether it's Nintendo Power, the internet, or even a friend, you're not going to figure any of these stuff out on your first playthrough.
Lastly, I should give mention to the second quest. Once you have defeated the game, you'll gain access to the second quest, which contains different locations for secrets and dungeons, stronger enemies, and different dungeon layouts. I have not yet played it because, quite frankly, I'd much rather keep my sanity intact. You can also enter Zelda in the file selection to skip straight to the second quest. I would love to imagine a newcomer to the Zelda series entering Zelda's name assuming it's the name of the protagonist. God bless their soul. I'm sure this game was like a masterpiece for its time, but ladies and gentlemen, that was 1987, and this is 2015. It was only a matter of time until the series would evolve from each other or change the formula on occasion. The overworld is kind of barren, controlling Link is a bit stiff, and a sense of the finding secrets is a little to be desired. Once you know everything there is to this game, you might enjoy it in your next couple of playthroughs. I can see when people have to adjust to this game, especially when they have to make their own stipulation like a swordless quest or a 3-heart run. If you want to play it, it's good to see where the series first started. You can find it on the 3DS and Wii U Virtual Console for $5, which is fine. But Zelda 1 is far from being the best Zelda game out there, and its historical significance does not compare with the gameplay being archaic, and that's all I have to say about that.
Now guys, here's the thing. The reason why I wanted to do Legend of Zelda on NES as my first review was not because it was the first Zelda game in the franchise, or because it's my favorite franchise in general, but because I actually wanted to continue on doing reviews on Zelda Classic. If you look back at my Zelda Classic video, you might remember that I said that a lot of Zelda Classic games are made with the same engine as the original Zelda game on NES. Because of that, I want people to understand the fundamentals of Legend of Zelda on NES before I head on into Zelda Classic reviews in the future. Hopefully it turns out well, but it's not going to be next. Hopefully in the future I'll do some other Zelda games as well as some other games that I'm actually planning on doing over there on my shelf. I'm actually looking forward to those. One more thing, I'm heading to MagFest this Friday at January 23rd to the 25th at National Harbor, Maryland in the Gaylord Hotel. MagFest actually ends on the 26th, but I'm actually heading there until the 25th, which is on the Sunday. It's a music gaming festival. It has some old games you can buy, it has some arcade games, some tournaments, some concerts. I'm not having a panel there, so I'm just going to hang around there. So if you want to say hi, if you recognize me, then feel free to do so. I'm looking forward to meeting some people who are a fan of my stuff. But that's about it. Thank you guys for watching. I will see you all whenever.